sticking with the same case, can we look at poll 00141259, please? We're now in November 2010. It's the same case. It's a memo to you from Phil Taylor, who's a legal executive in the Criminal Law Division. Could you scroll down, please? Can you assist us with who Phil Taylor was? Was he a lawyer?
Taylor, I think he was a legal executive. He worked in the criminal law team.
Does that mean that there's somebody who is not necessarily...
I'm not sure whether he was like the paralegal.
Does it sound a bit like a paralegal,
Yeah,
something like that?
Yeah.
Yes. He says as follows: Steve, the file has gone dead since Jarnell did the attendance note on the 15th of July 2010. I've written to ask the defence if they intend to serve an expert's report, but I've not mentioned the Misra case to them. They can find that out for themselves.
Wow, I mean, surely that sounds like something that they're thinking, well, it could be something that we should disclose, but hey, who cares? They can find it out for themselves. Seems like quite poor practice from someone in the criminal law team, to be honest.
What was your understanding of the duties of cross-disclosure? So the duty to disclose information from one case in another case.
Well, I would have expected the criminal law division to disclose fully what's going on.
But there they are kind of indicating to you, because that's in a letter directly to him, isn't it, to Stephen Bradshaw, saying that actually that's precisely not what they're going to do. I mean, I appreciate what he's saying, it's their duty to disclose onwards, but surely you'd go at that point, hey, wait a second, are we not doing something wrong here? Is this right?
So did you turn around on receiving this letter and said, no, you've got it wrong, it's disclosable?
As far as I recall, the defence team were notified of the Misra case. At some stage...
That wasn't the question that I asked.
At some stage, all I can answer is that at some stage you were informed about the Misra case.
At some
whether
stage.
It's through me, sort of going back to them or whatever.
Did that...
I mean, in well-run organisations, you would expect, for safety purposes, not only of yourself, but the people that you are serving, there to be kind of a duty of candour internally in an organisation to say, hey, wait, we need to think about this, no matter the level of seniority or which department they're working in, effectively to enable them to establish and run robust processes.
Form of words that was used by somebody from the criminal law team, that they haven't mentioned the Misra case, they can find that out for themselves. Did that cause you any concern?
Well, it's not very good, is it, at all? You know, it's like sort of saying, throwing something away, or go and find it for yourself. It's not what I would expect from a set of lawyers.
Yes.
to behave.
This particular individual wasn't necessarily a lawyer.
He was part of the division and acting for a lawyer from the criminal law division.
Did that...
Well, I suppose that is a good admission. This isn't what I'd expect from lawyers, and I don't think it's what many people would expect from lawyers or people working in a legal team either.
Cause you to send an immediate memo back saying you've got it wrong?
As I say, I can't, we were talking some 13 years ago now. But as I say, I know that it did come up and the defence team were informed of the Misra case. But I don't know when they were told.
And what circumstances, though, was it that they were told? Did they literally have to find out for themselves and then it was admitted? Because, again, that would be poor practice, it would seem.
Do you think disclosure was made, full disclosure of expert reports in that case, for example?
Yeah, because Miss MacDonald, she put her own, I think it was Charles McLaughlin, they put their own defence experts in.
They put their own expert in that particular case?
Yeah. Yes.
But from Seema Misra's case, do you know what was disclosed?
I don't.
No. If we look at poll 001699419, this is a month earlier, a month before that email. We have an email from John Longman to yourself, and it includes some documents from the Misra case, including the final technical expert's report, and it's that document that I would like to take you to. That can be found at poll 001699420. Thank you. could we please look at page 17, which are the conclusions in the expert report that was obtained by Seema Misra. Thank you very much. Mr. McLachlan says as follows, it is evident that trial balances and period balances showed a continuous pattern of discrepancies throughout the period for which transactions were provided. It appears that no action was taken by the Post Office to investigate these discrepancies or to ensure that Ms. Misra was competent to prevent them from arising. Instead, Misra removed an employee under suspicion of theft and implemented independent stock units for either counter. Neither action appears to have resolved the issue. If we look at 3.3, he says as follows, he says, the Horizon system has had problems in the past, as acknowledged by Mr. Jenkins, that's Gareth Jenkins from Fujitsu, in relation to Calendar Square. Unfortunately, the Post Office has not provided us with the opportunity to independently assess the possible impact on West Byfleet, nor have they provided a list of known defects in Horizon. The traveller's check problem is an illustration of the known defects we independently identified, but Jenkins confirmed that Fujitsu maintain a full list, which has not been released. The Horizon system is a component of the full Post Office operating environment. Other elements of this environment can result in changes to the cash balances recorded at the branch. Both transaction corrections and remittances will act in this way. Jenkins was unable to provide any opinion as to the integrity of these systems, and I was provided with no opportunity to investigate them. The Post Office has provided no evidence as to the integrity of these systems and the processes used to manage them.
So if we sum up, there's some discrepancies which are being caused and being witnessed, as well as lots of open questions which the defence expert in Miss Misra's case isn't actually being assisted with, which when we add up all together leads to there being some actual discrepancies and some theoretical discrepancies, but certainly enough questions that you would want to keep on looking at this as an organisation to see what kind of exposure, what kind of problem you have with the system, or indeed to rule out problems with the system.
So this is a report that you received that contains quite clear criticisms of the Horizon system. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And from your evidence where we began today about not knowing about bugs, errors or defects in the system, it does seem that you received at least a defence expert report that did identify those kinds of issues with Horizon.
People have said about bugs, errors and defects, but if you asked me what bug was there or what error or what defect, I couldn't tell you. And that's why I say I don't know of any bugs, errors or defects. People are quoting bugs, errors and defects, but nobody has said this particular bug, error or defect. That's what I'm saying. Nobody's ever come or cascaded it down to say what particular bug, error or defect was in the system.
So as a clarification there, we're taking doesn't know of the specifics of the bugs, errors and defects, but does that mean then that he is aware that there in general that there are bugs, errors and defects with Horizon, at least now, potentially at the time? It's not 100% clear, but that would seem to be the implication of the last statement.
This kind of information presumably is pretty pertinent to the case of Miss MacDonald that you are charged with.
And it would be passed to the prosecution, the criminal law team.
Why do you say it was passed to... you say it would be, I think. You didn't say was.
Well, what was?
How do you know that?
Sorry, my terminology again. Well, they will sort of had it because of the nature of coming out. John Longman has sent that to us for information. And it would have been passed, the criminal law team would have been there at the time for the case.
That sounds like theoretically, in his view, it should have been passed on, but as to whether there's concrete evidence it was passed on, that remains to be seen.
When you say criminal law team, who do you mean? Do you mean the Post Office?
The Post Office solicitors.
So Mr. Singh, for example?
Well, at the time, Mr. Singh come more on board in 2012 when the split from Royal Mail. When Royal Mail Group become defunct and Royal Mail Letters were becoming independent as a private company, that's when Mr. Singh was attached to the Post Office Limited. Before that, there was a number of lawyers in London and in the criminal law division.
So somebody in the criminal law division would have been aware of this, and what your expectation was that they would be responsible for disclosing that in another case.
That's correct, yes.
And that wasn't something that you needed to apply your own mind to.
As I said, all information I will have had will be sent down to our criminal law team, and they make the actual disclosure to the defence.
Did you
So effectively, it's not my job, which, to be fair, he may be right on. If he's passed all the information on, then the responsibility for failing to disclose that, which seems to be an indication of a letter from somebody, at least in the criminal law team, we'll let them find out for itself, would actually rest with that team. But you could still flag it, couldn't you, and say, hey, are we sure this is right? I can understand somebody who isn't a lawyer from a different department not wanting to say outright this is wrong, although you could suggest that they potentially know that, but at least flagging it as an issue, saying, are you sure you're right with that decision? Are you sure you shouldn't disclose it? Because my understanding would be that we should disclose it, and that's why I've passed it on to you.
Expect the criminal law team themselves to take information from one of their cases and disclose it in another one of their cases?
I would expect to with something like this. Anything that's relevant to something else, would expect the criminal law team as lawyers to let other people know.
When you were signing the disclosure statements of the schedule of unused material, schedule of used material, schedule of sensitive material, did you cast your mind to that issue as to whether there was information that didn't appear on your schedule but that was held in relation to another case?
I can't say I did.
And do you reflect on that at all?
I can't say, as I say, I can't say I did. I would, look for the criminal law team to do it. If I'd put anything on, it would have been filled in properly. If I hadn't filled it in properly, I would have expected the lawyers to come back to me to say if I've filled the form in incorrectly.
So essentially a multi-stage process, more than one set of eyes in more than one different job role in more than one department. That would be a good process to stop people missing things. But again, is there an issue here with how Post Office or Royal Mail, as was at the time, were assigning the role of disclosure officer? He admits that he signed off things as a disclosure officer and that, it wasn't a separate role from lead investigator, but was there adequate training there that they understood that one of the things they needed to do was look at other relevant cases and disclose that information that was available to them?
Can you not see a problem with signing a disclosure statement or a schedule of disclosure and at the same time assuming that there is other information not listed on there that was going to be disclosed to a party?
Of course, there's always issues if something is not told. But as I said, my understanding at the time, I had disclosed everything that was available to me, to them.
Do you not see a problem, though, in you creating a schedule of material that doesn't include material that you think, for some reason, is going to be disclosed by somebody else?
All the information I had in that file was sent to the criminal law team.
But this wasn't in that file, was it? This was in another case.
And it was held by the criminal law team, so I would expect them to disclose it.
So were they the disclosure officers in the case?
Well, ultimately they are the disclosure officers, because if they asked me to do any further work, it would be put in a statement to be sent to them and they would disclose it to the defence. I did not disclose anything directly to the defence.
And this possibly highlights an organisational failing within Royal Mail or the Post Office, depending on the time period we are looking at, where actually is there clarity among the employees they have about who is actually the disclosure officer, a defined role, because equally if that role does fall on the lead investigator, then presumably one of the arguments the criminal law team could have is we disclosed everything that was included on the schedule of disclosure signed by the disclosure officer.
Signing schedules of material purporting to be the disclosure officer, are you saying that you nevertheless assumed that there was some other disclosure officer?
That's the process the Post Office put in for the file. All my paperwork would be put there, the unused, the exhibits would be signed off in the committal file and sent to the criminal law team, who would then disclose everything to the defence.
Can you see a problem with the assumptions that are being made here?
Of course, there's always problems if too many people aren't involved or so. they think somebody else may have done it, but I would have expected the criminal law team to be the full disclosure officers.
Saying that there's always problems, I mean, you're not troubled by that in the context of a criminal prosecution where somebody could go to prison?
As I said, each inquiry is dealt on its own merits, and what I had would be sent to the criminal law team.
But do you not reflect on it and say, I'm producing a schedule for criminal proceedings where somebody could go to prison, and I'm not including all the material on that schedule?
I have produced a schedule of all the relevant information I had to hand concerning that inquiry.
But you're saying that there was other material outside of that schedule that you assumed was disclosed?
No, you said to me there was other material, and I said the criminal law team would have a copy of that, and if it had to be disclosed, I would have expected them to do it.
So if we look at the disclosure schedule in this particular case that was signed by you, do you think we will find this particular report?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, because I may have done, but I don't think so.
Okay.
But isn't that the problem, Mr. Bradshaw? I think, forget about the technicalities of it, the whole idea of having a disclosure statement signed by someone is to make that person responsible for its contents. Yeah?
Correct, sir.
Right.
But as I
Now,
say,
invariably, as I understand it, the chief investigating officer becomes the disclosure officer. And for the moment, let's assume that's fine. Okay. So the chief investigating officer has the responsibility for ensuring that all that should be disclosed in that statement is disclosed because he or she is putting a name at the bottom.
correct.
So at the very least, before you put your name to the bottom, if you are going to assume that Mr. X, a lawyer in the criminal law department, is going to provide some documentation to the defense, should you not liaise with him to ensure that that is done?
I understand what you're saying, and what I've said is that all the information I had to hand was sent to the lawyers.
Well,
I agree with you.
Putting it simply, you've agreed
Yeah.
with Mr. Blake that it was correct for the information in the Misra case to be disclosed in subsequent cases because it was potentially helpful to the defense. Therefore, in a case where the disclosure officer was going to sign the disclosure form, should he or she not ensure before the form is signed that the information in the Misra case is there and ready for disclosure?
Ultimately, yes.
Right,
You know,
thanks.
And that's the key point there. You know, that summary, that fantastic summary there from Sir Wynne just highlights the problem. Whatever you think other people may be doing, it's a defined role. Maybe it's ill-defined who it is at the Post Office or Royal Mail's end. At the end of the day, that's not the fault of the sub-postmasters, but it's something which, you know, ultimately you're taking responsibility for by signing off as the disclosure officer.